Hypocrites.
It's more correction, right, for the scribes and Pharisees. And we're in Matthew 23, starting in verse 16. But it's a continuation.
Woe to you, blind guides, who say, whoever swears by the temple, it is nothing. But whoever swears by the gold of the temple, he is obliged to perform it. Because that's not his gold to swear by.
Well, read the next part. Maybe that'll help because this is Jesus.
Fools and blind. For which is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifies the gold?
The gold, or the temple that sanctifies the gold.
The gift.
Like, is he saying that
For which is greater, the gift or the altar that sanctifies the gift?
hmm,
Oh, wait. I think I'm getting lost now.
no,
Which is
no.
greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifies the gold? Which is greater?
But I think the next part might help too, right? Oh yeah, the next part is like it's a continuation, I think. So if you read down to
And whoever swears by the altar, it is nothing. But whoever swears by the gift that is on it, he is obliged to perform it.
this is what
Fools and blind, for which is greater, the gift or the altar that sanctifies the gift? Therefore, he who swears by the altar swears by it and by all things on it. He who swears by the temple swears by it and by he who dwells in it. And he who swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and by him who sits on it. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites,
I know.
for
So that
you,
part, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. That's a good part too, the hypocrite. Sorry. But if so all them other ones seems related in the way that I think you can't have gold on the temple if you didn't have the temple first, is what he's saying, right? Like they're kind of nitpicking on rules, like you can't do this by this when they're all connected, I think maybe. Anyway,
but
so keep going on 23. I didn't mean to
I mean,
interrupt
he's
you.
not speaking directly to the Pharisees and Sadducees right now.
I think he is. Or is he? Oh no, you're right. So in the verse
So
23, he said
like
Jesus spoke.
I don't think this is as pointed and directed. He's just maybe publicly talking smack
I mean, they're probably because he's saying Jesus spoke to the multitudes and to his disciples. So
because they were
what
like
is so
questioning what God he was doing this by and like calling into question what he was doing.
and there must have been some there, probably, right? Some Pharisees.
Oh, there's no way they wouldn't have known about what he said. Right.
And right, there might have been some in the crowd, in the multitude, maybe. But I understand there wouldn't be a way that they would have
But I
told.
don't think it's not like he was having the, I think, more personal conversations and
Mm,
rebukes that he was having previously,
yeah.
which I think,
He's trying to teach the people too to make them understand, right?
because at some point, and like, I think this plays into it as well, is like, he keeps telling people he's gonna die, and it's like,
Right.
all of these people are gonna have to do it on their own after this.
Right. So he wants them to be aware of what they're being taught too, right?
Right. And he's
So
like,
that
well, you
they
guys
can,
are, he's telling them
yeah,
it's,
open your eyes, see what's happening, right? Kind of thing.
yeah, be aware.
Yeah. So the next part is a cool example too. So maybe it calls into the same thing.
Um,
23.
Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites,
Mm.
for you pay tithe in mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, Justice and mercy and faith, these you ought to have done, without leaving the others undone.
Okay,
Blind guide,
go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm so sorry.
did
Sorry.
you have?
Yes, well, I just wanted to, so he's talking about playing tide on the mint and the anisey and the cumin, which are tiny little herbs, right? So they're like,
I
you have
mean,
to
for the
count out,
food.
you're counting out 1/10 of the leaves of the mint or whatever. You're doing that. Like you're so exact. But
Right.
then you're forgetting about justice and mercy and faith. But
Why are
he's not
you not as meticulous with the laws as you are with
right. And he's
weighing
saying
out your tithes?
exactly. And he's saying you ought, right? These things you ought to have done. So they still should be doing that, but without leaving the others undone. You have to be doing like you still need to do both, but don't forget the weightier matters of mercy and love, mercy and justice and faith.
Are more important.
Yeah. And I think 24 is probably a visual example of that. So I didn't shouldn't have cut you off that quickly.
Oh, no, you're good. That was good.
Yeah.
Blind guides who strain out a gnat and swallow a camel.
So a gnat's being a tiny little fly.
Right.
They're trying to get rid of that. In the meantime, they swallow a whole camel. Anyways, kind of like the plank and the little splinter, right?
Oh,
But
yeah. That is
mean in
true.
a different regard, but a little bit like the size, right?
Right. Um,
So it's kind of a team here going.
Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you cleanse the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of extortion and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first cleanse the inside of the cup and dish, that the outside of them may be clean also. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are like whitewashed tombs, which indeed appear beautiful outwardly, but inside are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanliness.
So it's right, but it's that thing with inside your I mean you may look good on the outside, but what's going on in the inside, right?
Which
In
is
the
much
cup
more
and in
important.
the tomb here.
Right. You just some dusty bones inside there.
Just in yes.
Uh, 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 uh.
28.
Even so, you also outwardly appear righteous to men, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness.
Mm.
Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you
I know.
build the tombs of the prophets and adorn the moments or monuments of the righteous. And and say, if we have lived in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets.
Mm.
Therefore, you are witnesses against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your father's guilt. Serpents, brood of vipers, how can you escape the condemnation of hell? Therefore, indeed, I send you prophets, wise men, and scribes. Some of them you will kill and crucify, and some of them you will scourge in your synagogues and persecute from city to city, that on you may come all the righteousness blood shed on the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zachariah, son of
Mm-hmm.
Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Assuredly, I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation.
Oh,
So not good things.
not
If you
good thing.
listen to them or in general.
If you're doing them right. if you're
If you
not doing
listen to the teachings of what they're teaching.
right and doing them, yeah.
Do we know who's Berechiah?
The son, well, I think that's just, well,
That's
I mean,
Zachariah's father.
yes, but do we know of him otherwise? I'm not sure if we know other things
I
about.
mean, I mean, one of them got murdered, right? Who got
Yes,
murdered?
yes, he was a prophet. He's in there's a book
So
of
just as,
Zechariah
okay,
in,
and he got
right
murdered.
before Malachi. It's one of the little books, but he is in the 8th month on the 2nd year of Darius. The
Oh,
word of the Lord came to Zechariah,
I think
the
we've read
son
this.
of Berasha. You know, yeah. So I think they're just making sure that they're talking about the same person. That it's the Zechariah prophet in the Old Testament. So
Right.
that, and everyone would have known. They probably would have said that.
Who it was? They're like,
I
oh yeah, I
mean,
remember that.
yeah. And it's probably like, how we use, you know, John Smith. I mean, we don't, we would say their last name, so it's like the son of, right? A lot of names came from the son of people.
Right, because
So,
that's what your last
yeah.
name is, right?
Yeah, so exactly. But O or Mac, they were son
That's
of, O Brian or O.
so his name was Zachariah Berechiah.
Yeah, in our day we would have said it like that, right? And they would have said it like this.
Yeah.
I think that that's kind of how it happened. Pretty much. Maybe a
What does
little
it
different
mean to
culture.
be? They're just talking about murder between the temple and the altar,
I think he was physically murdered. They murdered him. They
like
killed him.
in the temple.
I think so. I
That's
think
wild.
actually murdered him because they didn't like what he was saying because he was warning them about their
But
sin and
like
stuff. You
they were
know,
just allowed to.
well, it wasn't
Well, I
like,
guess you're always allowed to.
well, right. I mean, it wasn't like that's
They
not a
felt that strongly about how wrong he was,
right.
but he wasn't wrong, I guess. But now they
Right. I
know
mean,
that.
he was saying right. He was speaking what God, so they either didn't believe what they were saying or they didn't want to hear it. It's tough. Lord, help us to hear what you're saying and not kill the messenger in a way. This is what they did. They killed the messenger.
It seems to be a common thread throughout history, you know?
Yeah,
That poor messenger.
I know.
People can't seem to just get control of their emotions.
And be able to tell the message from the messenger.
But then again, if it was
Um,
important enough to be sending a messenger, why not just show up yourself?
yeah. Would you have killed that other person then?
I think you could have had more dialogue and there'd be
Yeah. Now they didn't
maybe
always kill the messenger
people
because in
taking advantage of situations less.
yeah, like
Well,
so in Jonah, he did go and he told Nineveh and they repented and fasted and God did spare their city at that time.
right,
So it wasn't always that they didn't listen. Sometimes they did listen and they changed. So there is
right.
some, thank you, Lord. Oh, and I think we just have to find a little piece maybe.
Yeah,
Or
find a little peace.